world's writers will walk through those gates. And if you hang around, you get a chance to talk to them.
I'm interested in conversations that deal with things that matter, but real, how do we live our lives?
First of all, make climate change personal in your life. The second step is get angry and get active. And the third step, and believe it or not, I think this is the most important. We have to imagine this world that we want to hurry towards.
It's about kindness is looking at people as people and not as I voted this, I do this, whatever it is. There are some people we will never get along with, but most of us are a complex mass of different things.
My name is Randa Jarrar. I've been participating in the Edinburgh International Book Festival for many years. The festival has been central to my development as a writer. The thrill I feel as I enter Charlotte Square has never waned. I could always count on excellent programming and stimulating discussions. There has never been a time when such meetings are more important.
Hello and welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival, and welcome to this panel, Righting Wrongs, Voices from the Queer Arab Vanguard. My name's Alice Guthrie, I'm your host today. I've put this panel together. I'm a translator and editor of Arabic literary work, and I'm also in the middle of putting together a really exciting anthology of queer writing from across the Arab world, which is going to appear in English and Arabic parallel editions. And I am delighted and thrilled and honoured to be welcoming a really exciting panel of guests here today. I'm just going to tell you very quickly what we're going to do, and then I'm going to get right in and introduce them. So I'm going to introduce them, we're going to hear them read some work, and we're going to have a chat. We're going to be here for 45 minutes. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that we are pre-recording this remotely for kind of obvious reasons on the 31st of July 2020, but I'm hopeful that there might be somebody watching this in the future, at which point the pandemic has become an anecdote and faded back into history. So I put that out there. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my amazing panel right now. Just seeing who I can see all at one time. Okay, so I'm going to start with Amrou al-Kadhi, who is here in orange, and their tagline is professional unicorn and queer Iraqi non-binary Brit. So their debut book is actually out right now in paperback in the UK and in hardback in the US and elsewhere, and it's a memoir about queer intersectionality called Life as a Unicorn, a journey from shame to pride and everything in between. But Amrou does loads of other stuff too. So they're a freelance writer for lots of publications like The Guardian, The Gay Times, The Observer. I had to cut the list because it's just so long. Loads of writing, it's great. They're also a writer-performer, so they have several TV shows in development. They're the writer and creator of a horror drama about racial tokenization amongst liberals called Targets, which is in development with BBC Drama, looking forward to that. Then as a filmmaker, as writer-director, their first feature film, Layla, is in development with Film 4. And Amrou has another feature in development as a writer entitled Molly Boys with BBC Films. They've written, directed 4 short films. In 2018, they were selected as a Screen International Star of Tomorrow, and they were one of 6 BFI BAFTA Flair LGBTQ+ emerging filmmakers of 2017. They do loads of TV writing, including for Hollyoaks.
Oh dear God, yeah.
I had to mention it because I have an old story with Hollyoaks. We won't get into that now. And last, but of course definitely not least, they're an established and acclaimed drag performer. They set up their own troupe, and they have also their debut drag solo show in development, and that's going on to next year, inshallah, including in the Edinburgh Festival. And that's called Glamroo from Quran to Queen. So welcome, Amrou. Have you here?
That was like a Wikipedia page.
Well, okay, and then we have Raphael Khouri with us as well. So Raphael is a queer transgender Arab documentary playwright, documentary playwright, and theatre maker, living in Beirut, in Berlin, Freudian slip. So Khouri is the author of several plays, including the first ever trans Arab play, She, He, Me, which was performed actually physically staged in the Cosmos Theatre in Vienna late last year, but it was also recently performed online as part of New York City's Criminal Queerness Festival. Their other plays include, I can't pronounce this, Ich brauch mein Ruhe, I need my rest. It was performed in the Theatre Festival in Munich in 2018, and No Matter Where I Go, about queer women in public spaces, performed in Beirut in 2014. So Khouri is also part of the Climate Change Theatre Action group, and their play Oh How We Loved Our Tuna was read internationally as part of that eco initiative. They were a selected playwright at the Arcola Global Queer Plays in 2018 for the Lark Hotting International Play Reading Series in New York City. Khouri was a member of the Lincoln Center Directors Lab and was the recipient of a Rosenthal Emerging Voices Fellowship for Poetry. And then, their work's been published in lots of US journals, and a book called Global Queer Plays, and International Perspectives on Where Performance Leads Queer Anthology with Palgrave. And their work is coming out also in the upcoming International Queer Drama Anthology, published by Novelist Verlag in 2020, and the Methuen Anthology of Trans Plays, which is also out later this year. And they've also been commissioned to write new work for Outburst Queer Arts Festival in Belfast, and are featured there in 2019 and 2020. So welcome, Raphael, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And then I've got, last but by no means least, I've got Randa Jarrar, who I have to just say is joining us from LA, and it's 4 a.m. and she's rocking the nighttime appearance slot and starting up your hookah pipe, I believe, or some kind of pipe.
Other kind of pipe, yeah.
Some kind of pipe is going on there. So thanks for being with us at this ungodly hour, or godly hour, according to how you see it. Okay, so Randa Jarrar is a queer Palestinian Egyptian American writer. Her first book, the Arab American coming of age novel A Map of Home, was published in 7 languages and won a Hopwood Award and an Arab American Book Award. Her second book, the collection of short stories Himmi Muhammad Ali, won an American Book Award, a PEN Oakland Award, and a Story Prize Spotlight Award, and was named a key collection for fall 2016 by Library Journal. Loads of acclaim, basically loads of accolades. Her forthcoming book of nonfiction, which I was lucky enough to see galleys of in the last few days, and it's amazing, is called Love is a Next Country, and that's coming out in February 2021, so look out for that with Catapult. That's a memoir written in part around a road trip across the States in 2016. It's been described as a perfect howl. She's got lots of journalistic work, commentary and fiction, But she's also the executive director of RAWI, which is the literary non-profit for Arab American writers. She's received a Creative Capital Award in support of her upcoming novel. So as well as the non-fiction, you've got the upcoming novel, Lunch at Guantanamo, right? Loads of other awards and accolades. And you're also a translator and you teach creative writing. So welcome Randa, and welcome this really amazingly distinguished panel that you've all got like loads of skills and loads of aliases. I'm really excited to have you here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So we're going to start by having a reading. We've got readings from all of you, but we're going to break them up through the course of the chat. So let's start with a reading. Can we go? So who wants to start? Who wants to go first? You want to start?
Can you pick?
I can pick. You want to start, Randa?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm so looking forward to hearing all of these extracts. So yeah, let's go.
So this is an excerpt from Love is an X Country. And just do a content warning for explicit sexual situations. Great kink busts binaries wide open. Maybe there's not a duality of the self, but a hexagonal. Maybe we have so many desires that we also have just as many selves. Maybe having vanilla one-on-one straight sex is also a kink. Maybe we lie to ourselves all the time about what hurts and what doesn't and how much. Kinky queer sex is playful. All the trauma bonding that was forced on us as kids and that is forced on us now as we navigate and try to protect our bodies in a hateful empire, we can flip that and choose to bond with someone over pain we have both agreed on. Many of the dynamics of being a child are revisited, asking for care, being swaddled, belonging to a crew of neighborhood kids, riding a pony, eating a cake, pinning the tail on a donkey blindfolded, bossing your friend crew around, getting bossed around by your crew, asking your friends to tie you up and pretend to be bandits, tying up a friend and then tickling them. Everything is revisited now, and it's all so much better this time around. You're an adult and can give and receive consent. I cannot imagine a life without kinky queerdo friends of color, being unable to discuss the dude whose ass I'd fucked the night before, unable to talk to friends about the woman who I can't stop thinking about, who loves for me to whip her. I need to be able to tell my friends that she has the same name as my mother. I need my friends to laugh at this coincidence, to hear me talk about how the woman said, "Touch me everywhere, please," as I tied her wrists and ankles to the ends of the X-shaped cross, her breasts squeezed against it. How I warmed her up first, slapping her butt and skin, and began to crop her from the feet up, increasing the pressure when I got to her thighs. How we fucked on a bench at the back center of the dungeon, even though nobody was fucking yet. When we were ready to move to a spot to cuddle and she asked me for aftercare, I brought her to the four-poster bed and held her while everyone around us was fucking finally. We giggled. I told her I was so glad she was there and that I'd been worried since this was my first time at this particular dungeon that there wouldn't be many people of color. She said she felt the same way and that she was relieved and excited when she saw me. "When I saw you," she said, "I was like, yes, another Asian." I was shocked to hear this, that she knew I was Asian at all because no one ever does or considers me that. "Southwest Asian, right?" she said. "Right," I said. She saw me. Whenever I walked into a dungeon, I breathed more deeply. I felt every moment. I was in the present completely. I had to be. The person I was playing with depended on me and trusted me completely. After cropping someone against a horse bench, helping tie someone to a hook, or spanking someone so hard my palms smarted, I didn't feel gravity as much as I had before. Whenever I left the dungeon, I was completely free of all my chronic pain, of my emotional hunger, of my sadness. I was just me in that very moment.
Major. I was major.
Great start, Randa. Thank you. So I was I know that piece, but I was kind of laughing during the reading to myself, thinking, should I go straight to the research question after this? We're talking about, yeah, how we do research for stuff. But actually what I really want to kick off as a kind of launching off point is to think about whether, maybe like just get this out of the way, like, do you guys see your artwork as activism?
I mean, I'm going to jump in and say, like, yes and no. I mean, what I've definitely found is that when I've been in sort of pure activism space, particularly in the British media, whether it's, you know, going on TV to discuss an activist issue, I find the framing of it really damaging, because you're often put in this sort of defensive position where, you know, you, the minority, have to kind of debate your right to exist, or your right to your right to rights. And so I found that when I'm kind of wearing the activist hat in terms of kind of almost proper like political activism, I find that it gets so reduced to a debate and a culture war that I'm not able to really reveal the kind of humanity behind what I'm trying to say, or which is why I think I'm so drawn to storytelling, because I don't think I have an activist hat in terms of how I approach it. I kind of think that I approach it just by trying to create characters or stories that will resonate with people and help people empathize. And by doing that and revealing the humanity of it, I suppose it is a form of activism, just because, you know, being a queer Arab feels inherently political. But I like the fact that I actually don't actively approach it as this is a form of activism. I mean, I initially try and say this is storytelling that I hope helps you feel something. And I think that feeling or empathy that you can hopefully resonate with someone who even disagrees with you or whatever, it could be more productive to change than what I have experienced when I'm just debating social issues on British TV, just because the debates are designed for us to fail anyway. So that's my personal experience.
Mm-hmm. So that means that actually your creative work is a freer space, really, that you can do it with a completely different sort of nuanced set of approach.
You can also have joy. You can also have joy, and I mean that's why I loved Randa's passage just now. You know, you can have nuance, you can have joy, you can have complexity and contradiction. You can be queer and Arab, and sort of those things can conflict with each other in a way that doesn't need a resolution. Or a, you know, and that is where I think the complexity of our lives will come through. That's just my experience. But I've been burned very much by kind of debates with racists on TV. So that's really why I think storytelling is, especially in a post-truth kind of disinformation world, actually going to the heart of empathy is where I think is where there's potential.
And Randa, I mean, in that piece, I thought that was quite an interesting example. I hadn't picked up on it actually when I'd read it at some point, but that in the middle of that scene, that the phrase "a hateful empire" comes along, right? And so, like, I think that would be a really good example actually of how the creative allows a space for things to be said in a different way or in an unexpected time. And but Randa, you've also been burnt, right, by kind of encounters with.
Yeah. I mean,
anyway,
I think
answer in your own way.
Just being alive is like maybe considered activism sometimes. So, like just sort of
waking up in the morning.
Yeah, just breathing, like, can piss people off when you're at the intersection of so many identities or perceived intersections of identities or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, but I mean, I think it's important, you know, in the last couple of months in the US, we've had, you know, a really great swell of activism where we've been able to center the movement for Black lives, and the activism that is expected has kind of shifted. So I think that activism itself can be really interesting performance and performance art, as well as, like, you know, if we're talking about performative allyship and white folks who think that they're being activists, I'm talking specifically with examples from the US. So I don't it's not that I see myself as an activist writer, it's just that because I inhabit this identity and write or create, that I'm considered, like, you know, automatically an activist. So.
You are considered, and you also consider yourself, I get it, is what you're saying, right, as well?
In some ways, but honestly, I think, I mean, I just, you know, being out in the streets earlier on during the movement for Black Lives protests and seeing the ways that, you know, people really show up and spend hours out in the streets. I like sit in my comfortable house and, you know, write about characters. So I mean, yeah, sometimes I consider it activism, but mostly I think I just consider myself an artist, I guess.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Raphael?
I think it changed or evolved over time. Like it used to be for me, like putting on, as you said, the first trans Arab play was a form of activism, in the sense that you know, in the framework of making us visible, and some of that came from, you know, having been socialized as a lesbian in the 90s and the early 2000s, and being very impacted by how many women around me were activists and were, you know, taking care of AIDS patients and were social workers, and still to this day, and it made a big impact on me. It shaped who I am. And I don't have the brain to do NGO work. It's not part of my DNA. You know, I have family members, sisters who do that, but for me, I'm an artist. So for me, yes, that was my way of doing a kind of activism. And I think, in a sense, like I have people who come to me now and they're like, do you have any resources for Arab parents? I'm a trans person and my mother doesn't know what to do. And I'll be like, yeah, there's this Instagram thing. And then like the other day I was like, oh, I could send them my play because there's a mother in my play and there's families. And so in a sense, yeah. Or I had one time a Jordanian guy come to me in the middle of the street in London, and he's like, I heard your reading and it was so special to me. And I was just, you know, shaking because that was so moving to me. That's, for me, the reason why I did what I did, is just for one person even to say that. More and more, I find the activism that I'm doing is upon theater itself, because, you know, trans people and POC and Black people are excluded from a lot of theater in the West, especially. And even, you know, where I come from, living in Beirut is like, and in Germany, I've seen one trans person on stage my whole life. So in a sense, yes. And most, you know, for me, the deepest part of that is that theater itself was started, you know, it started in rituals for Dionysus, or in other countries by trans people. You know, we were the ones who were doing that kind of work in society, the healing work. And so for me, the activism that I'm doing now is that to take theater back to ritual, and to bring theater itself back to trans and to queer people, because we're the ones who started it.
Yes.
So important. Yeah. I was thinking actually we could maybe go straight to your reading, Raphael, if that's cool.
Okay.
Also from what you were just referencing, like it's right connected.
Okay, let's see.
Right.
Okay, this is a scene from my play where the character of Rock, who's a Lebanese trans masculine person, is trying to come out to his mother.
And this is from She, He, Me, right?
Yeah. The first rule of TV is never watch it with your parents, because here's what always happens every single time. If you're gay and in the closet, by some freakish coincidence, there's going to be a show on about gays, and your mom is going to start crying. If you're trans and struggling with it, by some freakish coincidence, there's going to be a show on about trans people on TV, and your mother is going to start crying. There I was, breaking the first rule of TV, sitting in the living room, watching with my mother. And who do they bring on Oprah? Not a queer person, not a recovering addict, not a serial killer, but a full-blown trans masculine person. Now here's where it gets interesting. The transgender person is there on TV, but my mother is not crying or frowning or wringing her hands. Instead, she says, in Islam, transitioning is acceptable. Now, clearly, I'm hearing things. What? Yes, Habibti, in Islam, this is halal. And I say to myself, okay, man, this is your chance to come out to her. Do it. Do it now. Mama, mama. Yay, look. Yay, the mother is crying. Ya haram. Mom, shh. You know I love Oprah. A couple of days later, it's the 3rd of July. We go to the beach in the south of Lebanon. We take out all the beach stuff from the car. My aunts are getting out the tabbouleh and the hookah. My sisters put on their suntan lotion, and I'm sitting there thinking, we're in a beautiful spot. Nothing can go wrong. My mom says Islam encourages transition, so this is the perfect moment to tell her. Now, my mom and I have always been close since I was never out there chasing boys. I was home listening to her gossip. So I put on a sad face. I know she's gonna ask what's wrong. What's wrong, Habibti? And I play hard to get. It's nothing, Mom, it's nothing. Ruwaida Habibti, tell me, what is it? I'm fine, it's nothing. I'm not going to leave you alone until you tell me what's wrong. I swear, Mama, it's nothing. Ruwaida, you're my daughter. I know you, you're not telling me something. Like, wallah, Mama, ma fi shi, it's nothing. Ruwaida. Mama, you remember that TV show with the trans person? Hey, don't tell me your friend Mariam, she's a man, right? I knew it. I knew it. Great. I just came out to my mom, and now I have to do it again. No, Mom. It's me. I'm male. Fatma, bring the chairs. Yalla, yalla, we're going home. Zainab, put the food in the car. Go get the umbrella. Yalla, yalla. Fatma, get the towels and the chairs. Yalla, everybody, back in the car. My aunts are hustling, and we're all squished back in the car. My sisters are screaming, Mom, we just got here. It's not fair. What's going on? Are the Israelis bombing or something? I wish it's worse. Inshallah, Israel ta'safkum, ya Rab. And then 9 days later, after I come out to my mother, the Israelis do bomb Lebanon. My mom and I are back in the living room watching TV. Not Oprah, but the news this time. It's the 2006 war. Lebanon is in chaos. My mother and I are sitting there watching 34 days of war. The airport is bombed, 64 bridges demolished, 69 roads destroyed, $2 billion in damaged buildings, $1.5 billion in damaged infrastructure, 1,233 Lebanese people died, 5,089 wounded, 1 million cluster bombs are dropped on the south of the country, and then our village got bombed. What does she say? Yani, this month of July has been cursed from the beginning. You know what I'm talking about.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm confused about whether, I can't remember now whether it's just Raphael on the shot during the reading, but I just want to say, in case you guys weren't also in the shot, that I was really enjoying watching your faces, Amrou and Randa, because you were clearly so into it.
Yeah, or just the mother, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Can we talk about, because I just want to remind, like, the viewers at home, that is documentary theatre. So that's not fiction, and documentary theatre, like, isn't a very known way of working. So can you tell us, like, what that means really, Raphael, and how that worked for you creating a piece like that?
I disagree a little bit that it's not fiction. I think documentary films and theater are, I less and less do I see a line between documentary and feature films or theater, because I think the documentarian chooses the stories they want to tell. They choose the parts of the story they want to tell. They choose, if it's film, they're choosing the camera angle. So and on stage, it gets dramatized and you get scenography. So I think all of those are subjective elements. And so I think it's very, very subjective. But what I do is I interview people, and then I take those interviews and, you know, I curate which parts of them that I want, and I dramatize them as well. So that's another kind of fictitious element, is like Rock kind of explained to me what happened, and then I rewrote or embellished parts of it. So
so that scene we just heard then is like far from verbatim, if I'm understanding you right, but it's also totally,
it's not that far. It's like that's pretty much how he talks, and it's pretty close. It's not verbatim, but it's you would, if you hear him talk, you'll be like, yeah. I mean, I like to think that I captured his character. So
but you refer to it as curation. I mean, because obviously the selection of which bits you bring forward from a narrative is,
yeah, like I listened to this interview that I did with him, and then I turned it off and I wrote this thing. Yeah.
And
I had a similar experience, Raphael, with writing an episode of Little America, which was based on real lives, and and you know, you interview them, and we really did have to fictionalize a lot of it for the sake of sort of TV and drama and pace and all those things that make a story watchable. But the subject who was about, when he watched it, said, you changed a lot, but it felt very true. And that was something that I was having a bit of a moral problem with, but it was sort of trying to capture the political truth of the situation and the energy, but also packaging it in a way that would work for an audience. And so I agree with you that like the line between documentary and fiction is getting so blurred now.
I want to see that.
It's on Apple. It's an anthology series about immigrants in America, and every episode is a different one. And I worked on the finale, which is about a queer Syrian and a queer Iraqi who come to America.
Wow.
It's so good.
You watched it?
Oh my God, I love it. Yes, yes.
Oh wow, that makes me, I'm really happy when.
Oh my God, no, it was so moving. I cried so much, and like, yeah, I love that episode, and the fact that it's the last episode in the series, like, really just highlights those characters and their grief.
Yeah, I was slightly nervous because when I got the brief for it, you know, there was a slight hesitation of like, is this going to be a show which is like people leaving their scary countries and coming to America? But it was nice to be able to show all the joy of the Middle East and Syria and Iraq in it, because actually I think it was quite heartbreaking that they have to leave, actually.
Yeah, and really, really important to escape that binary of like that kind of crazy redemptive narrative around arriving.
One of my favorite lines is when they open the door and they see him and they're like, "Girl, you look like you just fled your homeland."
Oh yeah, I love that line so much.
It's such a good line.
Oh, shukran. Oh, I love that. Oh, thank you. My favorite line is when he says, well, actually I don't want to ruin it, but the restaurant he's working at gets attacked and he says, "I'm really sorry." And the Muslim woman says, "You're not the problem here." That was like the most important line for me to get in there, I think. Anyway, yeah, it's an interesting bit. Rafa, did you feel morally nervous about adding your subjectivity to the story? Because I remember that was something that was keeping me up at night.
What were you afraid of?
Of sort of diluting or erasing or misrepresenting, I suppose. Thankfully, I don't think we did in the end, but I was just so nervous about that throughout the whole thing. It's the first time I did anything like that.
For me, the fear is greater when it about exploiting people and their stories, because that really happened to him, and I just want to be respectful, and I constantly, you know, I keep friendships with all the people that I interviewed, and Like Rock came to the first reading that we did of it, and it was the first time he had ever gone to theater in his life, and there was
wow.
So yeah, so that for me is more important, but definitely, yeah, I also fear like not getting enough trans voices. Like I had interviewed maybe 14 people, and sadly I couldn't have them all in there, and I had to pick 3, and that was hard. And so, yeah.
I think ultimately that fear is it serves a really good function, which is to push us, right, to make sure that we're including, you know, this, and that we're, you know, that we're being responsible with the subjects, and that we're, I think usually when we fear things, it's kind of like a little signal, little reminder. So
yeah, you're right, actually.
Yeah, and Randa, I wanted to kind of come to you a bit about this, because you've done lots of fiction, and you're also working from like the first person quite a lot as well, right? And your book that I have seen the galleys for is in, on one level, I mean, it's a memoir, but it's also very much full of amazing analysis of kind of cultural and political phenomena, or the moment that in which you're writing, so and historical moments and all the rest of it. So how does it work for you, kind of blending the personal and the fictional, or when you move between fiction and memoir and other people's stories and research?
I think that's something that I credit with, you know, like coming from people for whom like maybe genre isn't so fixed, you know, like growing up and just seeing people's novels be basically memoirs, or seeing people's memoirs be, you know, fictional, like highly fictionalized. Or
in Arabic, do you mean?
What's that?
In Arabic, do you mean?
Yeah, in Arabic, and also seeing plays, like growing up seeing Raya Waskina on stage, like seeing these stories that were based on real events, but then had become like super, you know, queerified.
We should say sorry to cut in, but tell us what that is for people in the audience who don't know Raya Waskina.
Raya Waskina, it's a play about 2 murderous sisters in Egypt. I think in the 30s, they kidnapped wealthy women and stole their jewelry and then killed them and piled them up in their basement, and we're just like, whatevs. And the play that's based on them is a musical, and it's hysterical. It's about these 2 super campy high femme women, like, you know, just murdering rich women, and just sort of eat the rich in practice. So
wow.
Yeah, just like that's our culture, right? Like we have so many of these amazing, like genre fluid. So yeah.
Well, that's really interesting actually as well, because, you know, I know something that's been said a lot about, specifically about female Muslim writers actually, is this kind of thing called the memoir fixation. Do you know that term? And as a not by the people who are doing the writing, so that the way that stuff is read is always that it has to be memoir, and so that people and I reckon that this is true for queer people and people of color and all sorts of probably people other than the sort of hegemonic white male or cis male or whatever, but there's this thing about that you're assumed not to be writing fiction, that it must be your own actual experience, this must be your actual story. But actually you're saying that you feel that an aspect of Arabic letters is the memoir, or is the blending, the blurring of those distinctions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that was kind of that's come naturally to you in a way in your work.
Yes. And I think I remember being at an event where Saeed Jones, who's an amazing poet, American poet, saying that, you know, people were angry that he'd gotten a memoir book deal, you know, when he was in his mid-20s, people being white people and white men specifically. And he just said, it's not our fault if we're just more interesting than you, you know? It's just like... Yeah, and I love that because it's, that fixation on reading things as memoir, I think, is also connected to thinking of marginalized people as incapable of creating art, but only as people who document things in a way that's just like almost machine-like. And I actually think that betrays the white gazes, especially the white cis heteropatriarchal gazes, like it's the gaze on their own art.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and it's also to do with this kind of decision that these works of art must serve as sociological documents, right? Like, you know, if I'm reading a novel from Iraq, then I need to learn about Iraq through it. Like it's a kind of sociology in a smoothie or something, which is wouldn't be said about, you know, a writer from like London, a white writer from London. Time's going really quickly, I'm afraid. I want to jump to you, Amrou, for your reading, and it's linked anyway as well, because it is a bit of kind of memoir, right?
It is, but actually I've decided to change it after just hearing what
we're not getting the
No, you're getting after what Randa was saying about the kind of you know, the drag queen-esque nature of sort of Egyptian melodrama. My mum is Egyptian Iraqi, so I wanted to read my passages about her. Okay, here we go. My mother's behavior at Arab weddings could make the perfect audition for RuPaul's Drag Race. And the next one we attended together only confirmed her as the clear genetic foundation for my drag career. It was a cousin's wedding, and this time it was happening in Mykonos in Greece. The wedding took place over 3 days, the first of which was a tropical themed party. The 3-event itinerary meant that my mother was strategizing months in advance, the trip more an opportunity to present a hat trick of award season red carpet ensembles than to actually celebrate the happy couple. Mama decided she needed a tropical themed headpiece to give her first place at party 1, but was struggling to find designers who could create one in the way that she had envisaged for her outfit. This is when she called me. Amura, I was wondering, do you know what I might be able to get a hat with fruits and plants on it for the wedding? I was thinking, yes, obviously, I basically sleep in such attire. Now, the only thing I had ever heard my mother say about my drag was that it was the root of all her unhappiness. Other than that, she pretended it didn't exist, and we never spoke about denim or what I was up to. I knew that she'd never come to a drag show or publicly show any support of it. But her calling me to ask if I knew any milliners with a flourish for the Copacabana, well, I interpreted this as some kind of silent acceptance. Why, yes, mother, I do. I have a friend who specializes in such things. Do you want me to take you to her studio? Okay, why not? With the espionage tactics of one of Charlie's Angels, I called my friend, telling her that I would be bringing my mother to her studio, but that all conversations about drag were strictly prohibited, and the fact that she had worked with denim in the past could not be brought up. I dressed in what was probably the dullest ensemble she had ever seen me in, and took Mama to her studio, a magical Narnia of hats bedecked with neon signs, Barbie dolls, and many other fabulous additions. The miller and I acted like faint acquaintances, and I pretended that I was seeing these hats for the first time, when in fact I had already humped the floor in many of them. Watching my mother try on hats that I had only recently performed in was pretty disorientating. It felt like a scene from an Almodovar film, where many different layers of performance were occurring simultaneously. My mother, walking around the studio, was someone who I effectively impersonated on stage, wearing the same hats that she was now trying on. And she right now was like a version of Glamroo, but in real life, with all of this left unsaid in an entangled merging of realities, very quantum. Mama eventually selected a leopard print hat that had a huge tropical leaf towering above it like a skyscraper, and which had to be placed in a box as big as a human adult. Just a little passage from it.
Amazing.
Fuck yes. Love it.
She is pretty major.
Brilliant stuff. Wow.
It's interesting, Arab campness, people think Arab, you know, societies are so kind of constrained, but I think camp is like where I learned it from, Egypt, actually.
Oh my God. And Sorry, Randa, were you gonna say something? I had a friend when I lived in San Francisco who was a professional performing drag queen, and they came over to my house one time, and I had a CD of Warda al-Jazairiyya, and he's like, "Oh my God, who is this queen?" And he thought this was a drag queen. I had to literally convince him that this was not a drag queen.
And can you just say for the audience who Warda al-Jazairiyya is?
Jazairiyya was a wonderful singer who actually died recently, and I think she had, less of a profile than she should have had, but she also was, she looked like a drag queen. I mean, she passed as a drag queen, and yeah, she was amazing.
But also, she was queer.
I think she was queer. Yeah, I think she was like a lesbian on the DL.
Oh, interesting. I'm not
like I was talking to some white friends about Kulthum the other day, like, the Egyptian singer, and I was just like, the melodrama of her lyrics, which are literally like, my eyes are bleeding at the sight of passion, compared to like a lot of Western lyrics, it makes Western music seem so constipated.
Yeah. There's a book actually about Kulthum's sexuality and looking at her as queer that I have right here somewhere.
Oh, wow.
We're almost out of time. I can't bear it because I've got so much else I want to talk to you about. I wonder if we can do like a shooting like few seconds each round of like what you're working on right now, what excites you, topics for like new directions. Go, start with you, Amrou, because you're on the screen in front of me.
Oh, what am I working on right now? I'm writing a TV series for BBC Drama. We'll see if it gets greenlit, about it's a horror about white performative allyship. And it's really dangerous, and I'm sure I'll get cancelled by the white left, but I can't wait.
Looking
That's
forward
amazing.
to that. Randa, what about you? What's exciting?
I have this memoir coming out in 6 months. I'm working on a novel that's a satire that is set in a queer utopic future. I'm also acting. I was in Hulu's Rami that just got a few Emmy nominations, and I'm in a short film coming out by Rilla Selbach called Finjan, where I'm kind of like an evil Palestinian ancestral energy woman. But yeah, it's great.
That sounds an interesting character. And what about you, Raphael? What's exciting for new topics for you or ways to work?
I'm working on a monodrama based on my life, which is kind of new for me because I usually like to be in the back seat and ask everybody else about their life, but somebody asked me to do that, so I started to write that, and it should be on at the Outburst Festival this year if theater still happens at that point. And I'm also working a lot on questions of theater and pandemic, and theater and ritual and shamanism and healing, and like getting at the roots of theater and what that means for us right now.
For what? Just break up for me then. I don't know if it did for everyone. What that means for
us right now.
For us right now.
And also I'm working a lot of I'm doing a lot of plant research and work as well. So yeah.
Wow. So we're out of time, but that all sounds so rich. I really, really want to thank all three of you, like, for what we heard today and got a little glimpse of about your art and your thinking, but also, yeah, what's to come. Follow these people, audience, and
yes, I've just followed you both on Instagram, by the way.
I will do that now. Live on a recording.
Yeah,
so,
I did it.
I really want to thank the audience as well, whoever and wherever you may be. And I want to thank Randa Jarrar, Amrou al-Kadhi, Raphael Khouri for joining me today. You've been brilliant. I'm going to quickly just say that there's an online independent bookshop associated with the festival, which you can find online. I believe it's shop.edbookfest.co.uk. So there's going to be titles by all of our authors and lots of associated titles. And the last little thing to say is that this year's festival program is free of charge for everyone. and it's been made possible by the generosity of supporters and donors. If you've enjoyed this event, we would love for you to consider making a donation to the Edinburgh International Book Festival so they can continue their work of putting on events for as many people as possible. And that's all from us. Much love. Bye.
Shukran. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Lots of love. Stay
So
safe.
much love.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.